Hey everyone, I have a very unique and special book to share with you. It is Tupac Shakur Legacy. This came out in 2006, 10 years after his death. He, as many of you know or don't know, Tupac Shakur died on September 13th, 1996. He was arguably, I feel in my opinion, the greatest rapper of all time. And it was a tragedy what happened to his life. He was shot and killed in Las Vegas, I think on the intersection of Koval and Flamingo, I believe. And he was shot on technically September 7th, but he was on life support till September 13th until he ultimately died. But 10 years later, this book came out to commemorate his legacy. And I would say this is more than a book. This is just a very incredible it almost reminded me of a scrapbook. It's just, it shows so much of his life and a lot of his work in a really unique way. And I'm going to show you by just opening it up here. But I'll just show you the front here. It literally is like a box, has this really hard, stiff cardboard feel to it. And yeah, there's a picture on the back here that kind of gives you an idea of, like, it's more than just words on paper. It is a lot of scanned and digitized of his writings, both on pen to paper and some of his drawings. Like, it has more of a scrapbook feel, and it really comes to life on how they show it. So let's just open her up here. So here you have it. It slides out like this. It's a hardcover. It's hard. I don't think this is in what makes this book special now, since I've owned this book for, I guess you could say, about 17 years. So I don't think you can find this in stores anymore. You can technically still find this on Amazon, but yeah, it's becoming more and more rare of a book to find now. And yeah, with it comes a CD, which has over 60 minutes of Tupac discussing his challenges, the new African Panthers, and his hip-hop career. So an unreleased 60-minute interview in the form of CD. I've actually played this CD, so it actually is pretty cool. But if you own any of his albums, you may recognize that they took some of the words from his interviews and actually sprinkled it in some of his albums. You may recognize it, but here's the CD. Yeah, and here are the track listings here. It actually has 13 tracks. I only played this once, and it probably was when I got it, so I actually kind of want to play it again to remind myself what he spoke about. I think people fail to realize that he wasn't just a rapper. Like, yes, I consider him the greatest rapper of all time, kind of like how Elvis was considered the king of rock and Michael Jackson's the king of pop. I would say Tupac is the king of rap, but the thing is, he was much more than that. He was a speaker, he was a poet, he was a writer, he was an actor, he was an activist. Like, this man he was very gifted with many talents, and he was just brilliant in how he composed himself and how he spoke. People see him as a thug rapper, but man, the old saying, don't judge a book by its cover, Tupac was one you did not ever want to judge. But yeah, here are the contents, and I'm just going to show you quickly why this book is really special. A lot of photos that were not released before are here. Afeni Shakur was absolutely heroic in making sure Tupac's unreleased work was released. Well, first off, it's first crazy to think how incredible Tupac's work ethic was, that he had this premonition almost as if he was going to die, and it actually inspired him to work many hours in the studio, constantly making songs, writing songs, recording them. It's crazy to think that he technically made an album in 7 days. That's how incredible his work ethic was. Yeah, the fact that he had these fears in his mind that he was going to die soon, he was making so much work to the point that he had this massive catalog of unreleased music. And after what seemed to have come true in his premonition that he did die at an early age, there was this ton of unreleased work that Afeni Shakur, his mother, decided to make sure that they were all released in albums. So it's so crazy to think that now he published more albums in his death than his actual life. That just goes to show how incredible his work ethic was and the amount of music he did make. So here, this is what makes this book special. You have these many of these enclosures. Here's one of the Black Panthers commemorative poster featuring Fred Hampton. So really cool. And they have in these nice little sleeve pockets here. And this is a bit of a precursor of Afeni's life, how she was part of the Black Panther movement. Crazy to think that when Tupac was in jail, he was actually in jail before he was even born, because Afeni Shakur was in jail while she was pregnant. So crazy to think that technically Tupac was in jail as well before he was even born. Yeah, there she is here. But this is pretty cool. Like some more here, you have this scanned article here of the Black Panther from Saturday, September 27th, 1969. And here you have Afeni Shakur. And here again, another insert here that was scanned and folded nicely. Revolutionary poetry. Here you have, again, Afeni Shakur. And then look, this actually folds even more. Like, look at this. So some of Afeni's work that she wrote, and this is the kind of stuff that makes this book so unique. And then here this is Tupac here at a very, very young age. And now we're getting to the point where we're showing more of Tupac's life growing up and a lot of unreleased photos that were scanned. And here's our insert here. 1984, I believe, the Harlem Month Theater Festival. Yeah, it kind of explains here. The insert is a flyer for Raisin in the Sun. This is one of Tupac's, either his very first or his earlier performances as an actor for Raisin in the Sun. We'll just get that back in here. There's not many pages to this book, but they are very thick pages, full of so much visuals. Here's another cool enclosure right here. This is Tupac's poem in tribute to Vincent van Gogh, who gave us so much through his art, but whose genius was not recognized during his lifetime. And that's sort of Tupac in a nutshell, very similar to Vincent van Gogh, a genius that was not recognized. And this is what Tupac wrote, Starry Night. This is one of his poems. This is an example of what the world missed out on, what Tupac could do. Just an incredible writer and poet. Here we got another extended piece here of all these pictures of Tupac during his time at the Baltimore School of Arts, where he got to hone in on his artistic creativity. Here's a picture of him with Jada. So I know those two those two were very close to each other at the time. Very good friends. Again, here's another scanned thing that Tupac wrote here, Message for Lisa. And then we have another insert here. Like, this is really cool. Look at this. Conquering All Obstacles with Tupac Amaru Shakur in November 25th, 1989. Even a time, Tuesday, 3 o'clock. And I guess I'm going to assume that was his instructor, but looks like he got an excellent score of 9. So clearly did a tremendous job to impress the instructor. But yeah, let's just take a look here. This is his words right here. Just so cool that someone went out of their way to put this together. This is just so awesome. I think more books like this should be made, especially of well-known people. Yeah, I hope more of these books get made because it's really cool. One of my favorite poems that he wrote was The Rose That Grew from Concrete. And this is basically all it was. Did you hear about the rose that grew from a crack in the concrete? Proving nature's laws wrong, it learned to walk without having feet. Funny it seems, but by keeping its dreams, it learned to breathe fresh air. And what I love about that was that was basically Tupac's life. He grew against all odds, despite his upbringing, despite the troubled life he lived. He was still this rose that grew through the obstacles of his life, the hard obstacles being this hard concrete. He grew through it and he made it. And what an awesome poem. And that's just an inspirational poem for anyone that is having a tough or difficult life, that you too can be that rose that grows from concrete. Here's another poem that he wrote, Wonder If Heaven Got a Ghetto. And again, on this loose leaf scanned paper that's stained, like it just shows how authentic this all is. Like, look, even this part's chopped off because I don't know why, but it just really shows. This really feels like you're touching Tupac's work. That's just how awesome they did a job at scanning this. So yeah, that's another enclosure of his work. And then they'll just have scanned images like this right on the paper here. Like, look at this now. You have literally this, anyone that grew up in the 90s knows of this type of workbook that you bought for school, and they actually inserted this workbook in here. Yeah, it's the Mead. It's the Mead brand that you were supposed to buy for school. Anyone that grew up in the 90s knew this. And then, of course, he wrote all into it. He wrote Tupacalypse Now was I believe his first album. And to think that he already wrote a track listing. Funny if he did this while in school, but yeah, this is the kind of writing he did. Really awesome insight to his life that they did this. And then you can pull this out here and more of his scanned work. Just incredible stuff. Look at here. You have now yet another enclosure, a sticker for Tupac's fans, a letter to Tupac from Columbia Pictures with details about the July 21st, 1993 Poetic Justice movie that he started with Janet Jackson. So let's see this letter. So first, here's the sticker. I don't know if this is an actual sticker. It feels like one, and I hope it is. I think this actually is a sticker that he has. But then here's the letter that Columbia Pictures sent to him. Please find your tickets to the premiere of Poetic Justice. Be funny if I actually tried calling this number today, see what would happen if it actually still is leased to Columbia Pictures. Wow, so cool. This is the kind of fame that Tupac had in his life. There's a picture of him with Janet Jackson on set, I believe. And when it comes to Tupac, some speculate what he believed in, what his faith was. I would say he was a spiritual person. Overall, I would see him as a spiritual person because I know there's speculation that, maybe he was a Christian because he had a tattoo of Exodus 18:31 on, but the problem with that was Exodus chapter 18 ends only in 27 verses, so there is no such thing as a verse 31. So that 1831, I don't know. If there was any type of religion I think he was associated with, it would have been Islam because he does mention the God of Allah in his music. And not to mention, he was friends with Mike Tyson, and he went to that Mike Tyson fight, and Mike Tyson is a Muslim, or I believe he professes to be a Muslim. So the fact that he was close friends, there could have been a major influence on that too. I don't know what he believed in. I'm going to say he's a spiritual person. The best chance of tagging any type of religion to him, it would have been Islam. And it kind of adds to it because the Exodus tattoo on him, that's part of the Pentateuch, which is the first 5 books of the Bible, which Islam clearly recognizes in their Quran. So make what you will of that. I really don't know what he believed in. He believed in a God, but which God, we don't know. But I would assume it's the God of Islam. But overall, he was just a spiritual person, in my opinion, and talked about heaven. He really thought deeply about his spiritual faith and his journey. So that's one thing we can all respect about him, is how much he took it seriously. Again, another poem of his, How Can We Be Free? It's kind of a shame too, because his mother created the Tupac Amaru Shakur Center for the Arts. And this was awesome. It gave kids the ability to express their artistic side, and it was awesome. But then sadly, it closed down, and I think a lot of the funding came from Tupac's unreleased work. So on the plus side, Afeni actually made sure all of his unreleased work came to light in albums, and that was a win for the estate. It was a win for the fans. But I think it did a lot of the heavy funding for this, because I don't think they ever charged the kids to go to this school, and it was an expensive piece of property. But sadly, it closed down, and shortly after it was sold, Afeni, Tupac's mother, died of a heart attack. So kind of sad that Center of the Arts could not live on. Really unfortunate, because I think what a great way to continue his legacy. We're kind of nearing the end of this book here. Again, more awesome inserts here. Tupac obviously had a lot of legal problems in his life, unfortunately. Dear Judge Wu, please do not send Tupac to jail. He is our friend. He was here before Joshua, my brother, passed away. And Dominguez Torres wrote that in 1994. Yeah, Robert Torres. Okay. Wow. Pretty cool. Well, look at this. Look at this. When Tupac was sent to, I believe, Rikers Island prison in New York, this was his card, his ID card here. Wow. So cool. I mean, I think the world has truly missed out on a gifted talent. It's a shame he was taken away way too early, and to think that had you been alive today, so much more music and films and writings could have been accomplished. Okay, here's a letter to Interscope Records, which Tupac, this is from Tupac, because clearly he had dealings with Interscope Records in his music career. Okay. Kind of explaining his agreement with Suge Knight. Crazy to think, though, 27 years later, Keefe Davis was arrested, and he was one of the 4 people in the vehicle that at the time pulled up to Tupac Shakur's vehicle and shot him in Las Vegas on that day. He's actually, Keefe Davis is the last sole surviving witness of this whole ordeal, and he recently just got arrested now. So there is a tiny bit of justice for the Tupac Shakur family. I granted it crazy. It took 27 years, but finally they have some amount of justice to this unsolved murder, which has now been apparently solved. What happens to Keefe Davis, we don't know. Hopefully, because he's the last member alive, hopefully he shares more information, but he is now incarcerated. Personally, I feel it was his nephew, Orlando Anderson, that was the one that shot and killed Tupac. We're not for sure certain, but personally, I think it all makes sense, because that night of the Mike Tyson fight, security cameras did show at the MGM building that Tupac and I think like 4 other people basically approached Orlando, and they stomped him, beat him up, took him out. There's security footage of that. So clearly, if you're Orlando Anderson, if you just got beat up by Tupac and some of his guys, you want to seek out revenge. And I'm pretty certain he was the one that shot and killed Tupac. And to kind of add more evidence to that Orlando died 2 years later after Tupac. So clearly, so much gang issues. I don't know how you die 2 years after Tupac without being involved in the murder. And why is his uncle arrested? I believe he was the shot caller. And at least that's what the Las Vegas Police Department believe. They believe he was the one that planned the killing, and Orlando was the one that shot him. There is speculation that P. Diddy placed a bounty on Tupac's death. That hasn't been proven yet. Anyways, I think Tupac also had aspirations for a restaurant, and here's a list of his sort of the things he wanted to buy for this restaurant. Unfortunately, that restaurant never came to life. Yeah, Tupac just wrote on everything. Here you have this Beverly Hills notepad, and he just wrote on it on an album that he wanted to do here. Here's his track list here. Just so cool that a book like this could be released, showing so much of his stuff. And here's a picture of him clearly He was not shy to make food. Who knows? He could have been a chef. Another skill set this man had. Here we go. More enclosures. Like, what on earth is going here? Oh, another movie he was part of, the Gridlocked. Here's the call sheet. Wow. Here's a memo. Gee. So if you're ever an actor in Hollywood, this is kind of the stuff that gets mailed to you. Wow. Yeah, so pretty cool. No wonder this is starting to become a collector's item, because I don't know how many of these they made, and the fact that this came out in 2006. Yes, you can still get this, but it's not as easy anymore, and yeah, it's just not in bookstores anymore. Picture of Tupac with Snoop Dogg and Suge Knight. Here's a card from euthanasia. Don't exactly know what this is, why, if Tupac was behind it, but wow, you see an idea of the expenses for this, $46,000. And then here's yet again another insert. What do we have here? Euthanasia, another potential album. There's no euthanasia album to my knowledge, but these are the kind of ideas that were always in Tupac's mind. He had quite the dreams and imagination. It's clear his thoughts were always moving. Okay, another poem that he wrote, The Fear in the Heart of a Man. Who knows? And this guy could have been an artist. Like, look at the way he could draw. This is just pen on paper, and look what he drew here. I think this was probably another idea he had of creating a cafe, another dream he had. And, it just should inspire people to never stop dreaming of what you want to accomplish in your life. Don't ever give up on your dreams. Pretty cool. Here's another type of menu he was creating here, desserts and sides, and what kind of staffing it'd be, like cooks and manager, hostess, waitress. Like, this is so cool. Oh, what do we have? I guess I didn't get to grab this out here. Quincy Jones, Tupac, One Love, Quincy. Wow, just a few months before he died. Just like a handful of months, May 26, 1996. Wow, man. I'm glad I get to share this with you guys. Since it's not really in bookstores, it's going to be hard to find, so I'm glad I can share this with you all. Big Lock, or here's a letter from Tupac to Big Lock. He had pretty good writing. This is more printing. It's not cursive. Obviously, his spelling's a bit off. Pretty legible, his printing. Sorry. He had pretty good penmanship. Not many pages left here. Okay, Grammy Awards of 96 here. And of course, what a fitting poem to have at the end. In the event of my demise. Yeah, June 16th, 1971 was his birth. What do you have here? The enclosure. Directions to a memorial service for Tupac, at which his ashes were scattered in the Sea of Malibu. Okay. And yeah, as I was talking about earlier, the Tupac Amaro Center for the Arts right here. Glad they showed some pictures, because sadly this no longer exists. I think the statue's gone, the property's gone, everything is gone. It's kind of sad. He did have a clothing line, Machiavelli branded, which is pretty cool. But yeah, here you go. Tupac Shakur legacy. I really loved listening to his music growing up. What a treasure it was. Sadly, the world lost a great talent and a great voice.